Hello, in this video we're going to discuss purgatory, consequences to world leaders. So in purgatory, if a person is a world leader and their people have done something through their leadership which has resulted in harm to others, then they wind up in purgatory over it. So I'll give some examples of world leaders and what's happened to them in purgatory. Okay, so one example is Adolf Hitler and his group of the guys that worked for him that were responsible for the atrocities during World War II all wound up in purgatory getting punished. So whatever was done to the victims gets done to the leader. So another example would be if a leader of a country said it's okay to waterboard people, some innocent person gets arrested, gets waterboarded, then that country's president or prime minister winds up getting waterboarded in purgatory. But the difference between purgatory and earth is in purgatory people will always get killed and then have their soul refilled with a new body and then get killed again. So it can go for thousands of years, something like this. So as a world leader, you've got to make changes to your governments, prime ministers and presidents, and ensure the safety of innocent people within your nation. This also goes to religious leaders. So if a religious leader came up with an idea and a law which involves hurting innocent people, and the law is wrong in the first place and shouldn't be there, and innocent people get murdered by being stoned to death, then that individual winds up having it done to him each time it happens. So an example of this is Moses. So Moses and Aaron came up with some laws which involved stoning of women for adultery. Adultery is not a sin in actual fact. It should not be on the Ten Commandments at all. It's where two people have feelings for each other and form a relationship. So that shouldn't be there, and as a consequence, even today in countries throughout the world, people get stoned to death. Then Moses and Aaron, who are in purgatory, and there are other people who are also responsible, who are other religious leaders, wind up against a wall and have rocks thrown at them. Or not against a wall and still have rocks thrown at them. And the archangels that work in purgatory have to stone them to death. So that's another example. In the case of world leaders following Satan's influence, if you do that, then whatever it is that you are doing to your people will be done to you. So if your people are getting Christians or anyone else and drown raping them and putting them in burning chemicals and doing experiments on them, then that will happen to you. Alright, so it's unacceptable. Another example, there was a person who was a leader who had a relationship with a woman, and it went public, and that leader then imposed problems on that lady's life afterwards because he was angry with her, and that leader wound up in purgatory over it. Although it's a more personal thing when someone does that. In the old days, kings and queens used to have a barbaric form of entertainment where they would send their guards into towns and they would kidnap children and bring them back to the castle. The families would go searching for the children and then be led to the castle through a door that is not the front door. They would then wind up in a chamber where the entire family would be raped and tortured and murdered for the entertainment of the king or queen. This sort of thing still exists to this day. When Queen Victoria was queen, she came across it. She was forced to watch this hideous form of entertainment in England. And she informed a knight, whose name is Yorkie, and he went down there with his horses and killed the people who were doing it. So there has been incidences in the past in the case of kings and queens who did that sort of thing. In purgatory, they get punished by it. So whatever it is they did, and how that is achieved is with innocent people, we swap them with Aaron chassis, and Aaron chassis record data of what the victim went through. They follow a process of acting when something is done to them, which is a normal human response. And so when the Aaron chassis is killed, the information is is kept with the Holy Spirit, which is then brought to purgatory. And then when the offender dies, we take them to purgatory, and there they see what the Aaron chassis went through, and then they get punished. So it's worse for a world leader for things like this, because when you're a leader of people, the amount of atrocities and crimes that are committed against innocent people can be quite vast. It can be a lot of people. We're talking millions. So over a period of time, if they bring in a wacky law that involves killing people, killing innocent people, then even when that world leader dies, they're still held accountable for that wacky law that they brought in. Now, an example of that is Adolf Hitler. There are others like him, like religious leaders, who brought in wacky laws which result in people getting stoned to death or killed. In the case of Nazi sympathizers or Nazi people wandering around killing innocent people, when that occurs, say for example, a person who's a skinhead who's into Nazism goes into a building and kills a bunch of innocent people. When that occurs, Adolf might have finished. He might have been out of purgatory. Then suddenly, the archangels turn up. Adolf, back to purgatory you go. And he becomes a target, and they pull out machine guns and gun him down continuously. So that's the nature of purgatory. It winds up a firing range in cases like that. And the offender who came up with in the case of Adolf, it wasn't just laws, it was a way of thinking. So that's the other thing people have to be aware of, is that consequences of a way of thinking also leads to purgatory. And purgatory is a violent place. People get treated very harshly. Social isolation. If a person is a leader and they impose social isolation on a particular group of people, like Christians, or any other race, there are other examples, like the Rohingya. If a leader imposes some terrible social isolation and restrictions on a people like that, then that leader is going to wind up in purgatory. And the time a leader can wind up in purgatory for, we're talking hundreds of thousands of years onwards, billions of years. And you'd never be accepted into heaven. You'd wind up in the storage dimension, and then your soul just reaches a point where it just dies, and then all the soul matter just scatters. So that's a consequence for world leaders and purgatory. Just remember, if you authorize something and things happen to innocent people, it will happen to you in purgatory. In addition to what I just mentioned, I'd just also like to point out that if you target a group like people who are gay, lesbian or transgender, and you impose laws on them, I'll just point out that gay, lesbian and transgender and bi people also exist in heaven, and it is not against the law in heaven. If you make laws against these innocent people on earth, then you will be punished. It is one of those things that will get you in trouble. So that's another thing for world leaders to reconsider, because if you impose harsh penalties on an innocent group like that, you will wind up getting punished in purgatory. It won't only affect a leader, it can affect the entire cabinet or senate. Group of leaders and ministers, ministers of parliament, senators, governors, policemen, police chiefs. All those people are held accountable for anything that is done to innocent people.